The movie that startled me at the beginning of 2024, and I have watched over 500 horror movies, but I didn't expect to suffer from insomnia due to this movie. The way the monsters appear inside gives me goosebumps when I think about it now. It's like a huge caterpillar, with its feet replaced by thick arms. The entire lower body is used to digest the human stomach, and this thing is female, even picking on women's mouths. The story takes place during an archaeological excavation in 1963, when they accidentally opened a cave and retrieved a square coffin from it. At the moment when the coffin saw the sun, a woman in an apartment suddenly heard a roar, but two eerie footprints appeared in front of her, and they were still dripping water. Just as the woman turned her head, the footprints mysteriously disappeared again. The woman stood up in terror and saw a square box in front of the door. At that moment, a pair of pale eyes appeared behind him. At the moment when the woman was eaten, the lights in the building also returned to normal. Meanwhile, a group of illegal immigrants arrived here. The woman's name is Anna. She came to the United States to have a dream of becoming rich, but life made her lower her head and she entered a factory to do the most tiring job. In order to save rent, Anna unknowingly came to the apartment where the accident occurred. Although the landlord is a burly man, she only receives female tenants, and with Anna added, there are only 2 people in this building. Although the facilities were a bit dilapidated, they were still cheap. Despite the landlord asking him to pay a month's rent in advance, Anna still chose to keep them. At night, strange things happened, and as he was about to fall asleep, it seemed like he had dreamt of his mother.
Puedes creer un poco más. Claro.
At the moment he closed his eyes, there was really a palm behind him that caressed him, but Anna didn't notice anything. The next day, he got up early and went to the factory. Coincidentally, he met the second tenant on the stairs and warmly greeted them.
Sorry, I'm Amanda. Brett said it's just the 2 of us.
Brett is full of shit.
This sentence confused Al a bit. As he turned around to go to work, he didn't notice several eerie figures standing on the hallway, and their eyes were all sparkling with white light. In order to get rid of the difficult life, Anna worked hard to save money and wanted to study at a local university. But he is Spanish, but he needs a local birth certificate to enroll, so he asked his colleagues to leave and helped him get one. At this moment, the black girl suddenly said that the price had increased. The extra $2,000 from the price increase would at least make her work for an additional year. Fortunately, Anna has a relative here, and his uncle promised to arrange a decent job for him as long as he has a birth certificate. After Anna happily returned to the apartment, he heard a sound coming from the nearby room. Isn't there only 2 tenants here? He walked over curiously, next to a locked door with several deep scratches on the frame. Just as Anna was feeling puzzled, the landlord suddenly appeared.
There's something?
Hey. No. What was the sound?
Basement private.
Anna tried to get back the prepaid rent, which would allow him to enter the school as soon as possible, but the landlord naturally refused him, claiming to have spent all the money. Helpless Anna could only return to the room to plan the next steps. At this moment, a cry for help came from the ventilation vent, and beneath his feet was the second tenant he had encountered during the day. Anna knocked on the woman's door, but it was not locked and there was no one inside. Obviously, the woman had left the apartment and he found green powder on the door frame. Anna thought it was a hallucination and left here, but a strange sound appeared behind him again. In a daze, he dreamt of his mother again. But this time, the old lady kept staring at the corner, and the square box appeared in his dream. Anna didn't know what this dream represented, so he came to the factory as usual. At this moment, a butterfly flew over and something strange happened as well. This time, he truly felt the touch, thinking it was a prank from a colleague. After work, he found the woman again and asked about the certification process. Watching Anna work so hard, the black girl promised to help him make up for the remaining $2,000, but if one day he becomes wealthy, she will definitely double the amount. Of course, Al was very willing to foolishly give all her savings to the black girl. While walking on the road, she was still fantasizing about having a birth certificate soon, but when she returned to the apartment, she saw a strange scene. The landlord was banging his head against the iron door in the basement. As a girl, she didn't dare to inquire and quickly fled back to her room. Unexpectedly, the hallway lights suddenly lit up, and a figure appeared in front of the door. After speaking, he mysteriously disappeared. Anna walked out curiously, but met 2 women in the kitchen. They were newly moved in residence and were temporarily called Big Sister and Second Sister. At this moment, the landlord also walked over and arranged accommodation for the 2 of them. Just as Anar was about to return to his room, he happened to see that the landlord's door was not closed, so he curiously walked in. There are many butterfly specimens here, as well as photos of the landlord's childhood, but a recorder caught his attention. Anar curiously put on her headphones, which played a sound similar to a sacrificial ceremony, as if she could also receive some kind of protection. There are also notes of the sacrificial ceremony and the square box in his dream in the room. At this moment, an accident suddenly occurred. Anar seemed to feel someone at the door, but when he looked up, the figure disappeared again. He quickly put the photo back in its original position, and as he left, the figure reappeared. The next day, Anar returned to the factory, only to find out that the black girl who helped him obtain the certificate had actually resigned. That is to say, all his savings were scammed out, and Anar had to return to the apartment. As he was confused about what to do next, a cry for help suddenly came from the floor drain. He quickly turned off the faucet, and the sound became clearer and clearer. At this moment, a figure suddenly walked in outside the door, and Al looked up in fear, looking like the second tenant downstairs no matter what. He panicked and escaped from the room, coincidentally encountering a passing landlord. When he asked Jean May, the landlord said he had moved away for 2 days, but who could have been the figure just now? At this moment, the light suddenly went out, and a butterfly flew out of the basement, flying all the way to Angel's side. That's it, this shot is destined to happen. At the moment she turned around, the butterfly just now flew up again. It turned out to have been just a dream, but it was so real, and the door was also opened. He was certain that he had locked the steel door when he entered. Anar stood up cautiously, but across from him stood a figure, staring intently at him. She also saw a real ghost for the first time. It seems that ghosts are also afraid of something. Anar turned around and another ghost appeared, fiercely trying to catch the girl back. The scene of ghosts was so shocking that 2 ghosts stood up in front of him. Anar followed curiously, and the girl kept begging for mercy.
Please let me.
Such a realistic scene, even a normal person wouldn't live any longer. Anar quickly packed her luggage and planned to leave the apartment. When he left, he found the landlord and wanted to refund the deposit, but the person who opened the door was a tall man who shouted that his bald brother was the landlord's brother and said he was not there, so he closed the room. Anar didn't want to stay for a moment when it snowed heavily outside. He could only find a cheap hotel, but all the money added up was not enough for the room fee. Anar was kicked out and finally arrived at the subway station, trying to spend the night, but suddenly the lights flickered. The subway, which had just been filled with people, was now empty. Just as Anar was feeling panicked, his deceased mother appeared eerily and reminded him to look to the other side. The square box reappeared, and there was also a monster trying to crawl out inside. This is Anar's second time dreaming of this box. Unexpectedly, the landlord suddenly came over and tricked Anar into saying that he was in a hurry to leave and didn't bring any money. If he wanted to refund the rent, he would go back to the apartment with him first. So, Anar foolishly returned here again. The landlord said that the money had been placed in his room. When Anar returned, there was no money, only the landlord's squinting eyes and his 2-meter-tall brother. Anar was so scared that he curled up in the corner, bawled and asked him to open his mouth.
Open your mouth.
Seeing the 2 people being so violent, Anar dared not resist and was locked inside the house. After a while, the eldest and second sisters came over and looked very scared. Obviously, they were also threatened. Anar suggested that the 3 of them escape, but the older sister said that the landlord had been guarding for a round and was right next to the entrance to the basement. Upon hearing the basement, Anar thought of yesterday's cries for help and suspected that the landlord had locked all the previous residents in the basement.
Something wrong with this place.
What have you seen?
I keep dreaming about home. My son is there, but he's changed. Something's different. And then I see this box.
Stone box.
Seeing the eldest sister nod, Anar realized that they all had the same dream. She dreamed of her mother and the eldest sister dreamed of her son, which were the things she longed for the most in her heart. They suspect that the source of their dreams is the box, which may have been hidden in the basement because the ventilation system keeps emitting a woman's cry for help. At this moment, a group of 14 ghosts appeared, staring eerily at Anar, as if warning him to flee quickly. The eldest sister miraculously disappeared, and soon their mother appeared.
Quédate un poco más.
Someone pulled him out of the illusion. At this moment, the landlord's two brothers were catching the eldest sister and the other two. Anna rushed forward to help, but was thrown out like a bald chicken. At this moment, the doorbell suddenly rang and Anna was locked up again. It turned out that his cousin had come over because they had agreed to help Al find a job, but his niece never appeared. He asked if his niece lived here. The landlord was about to deny that his cousin happened to see Angel's coat through the crack in the door.
That's her coat. What the hell are you talking about?
That's her coat my wife gave.
After seeing his niece, my uncle broke into the apartment, but it also became his burial ground. Poor cousin was hit with a bald head and his life and death were uncertain. Anna was also chained up, and the landlord painted him green powder, claiming that everything he did was to cure his brother.
We did the world a favor, getting rid of our dad. I wanted to leave right after. Beck said we could fix the place up. But just like Dad, he started spending more time with that damn box. He thinks it chose him. And then he started getting better. Beck says he only needs a few more hits and then we can stop all this.
Hits of what? How many, Red? How many women?
He's my fucking brother!
It turns out that the landlord only harmed the female resident to cure his brother. Anna tried to awaken this kind person, but he really opened the chain. Next second.
Sorry, Chica.
Red.
At this moment, Bald walked in, and Anna was smeared with blood before being carried out of the room. Along the way, all the mutilated souls appeared. It turned out that they had appeared multiple times to scare Anna away, but it was too late and he was thrown into the basement. At this point, Big Sister's head has already been eaten by the monster. After Anna was tied to the altar, he opened the box with his bald head, and inside it was a bottomless passage that seemed to connect to another space. After finishing everything, the bald man closed the steel door, and footsteps began to come from the passage. Countless butterflies circled around, as if welcoming their mother. At a critical moment, the steel door suddenly opened, and Anna's uncle did not die. He was also imprisoned in the basement. Just as the two of them were leaving, the outside was covered with headless female corpses. They didn't dare to stop and knocked open another steel door, which turned out to be the end of the passage. Anna saw herself standing in front of her mother's hospital bed, and in this space, she also saw the outside world. At this moment, I didn't break free from my face and lay quietly on the altar. In the passage, a pair of huge palms extended out, followed by a woman slowly appearing, covering her face. At the moment the monster landed, Anna in another space also felt something.
Quédate conmigo. No quiero que te vayas.
And while hesitating, the monster finally revealed its true form. It's like a huge caterpillar with 4 arms, gently caressing Anna's face. Below it, there's a huge mouth. Just as Anna was about to be eaten in one bite, she chose a different outcome in another space. He actually knocked down his mother and suffocated her alive with a pillow. And in reality, Anna also woke up, and the monster gave up eating and returned to the stone box as a result. Anna felt uneasy and sealed the box again. He stumbled upstairs and passed by the landlord's room when he suddenly saw 2 wolf-toothed clubs. Anna decided to start counterattacking, but at this moment, Bald felt something was wrong because his wounds would quickly heal after the monster ate. But there was no response this time. He asked his younger brother to check the situation. As soon as he opened the door, the bald man stood up. Although he was also cut, his combat power was clearly much stronger than his younger brother. He even stepped on Anna's ankle, and when he turned to pick up weapons, the second sister next to him suddenly attacked and ran away. However, the bald man grabbed him again and threw him directly into the building. Afterwards, he approached Anna again, and while dragging, the woman picked up a piece of debris. She looked at him with a bald head and became lecherous. Anyway, the monster only ate its head, so she didn't mind if he was a yellow flower girl. Anna suddenly counterattacked and then used fragments to cut through his main artery. He was bawled to death and never expected to fall into the hands of a naughty little girl. Anna returned to the room and picked up the wolf tooth stick. Just as Anna was about to leave, he suddenly heard another sound coming from the room. It turned out that the landlord was not dead yet. Anna looked at him evil and tied the landlord to the altar. It turned out that the monster was not just a woman, but also a man. After solving everything, Anna left the basement. He originally wanted to leave this place, but as soon as he walked to the door, he saw the landlord's soul. Only those who are swallowed by monsters will stay in the apartment. At this moment, his fractured ankle miraculously recovered. Anna finally understood the meaning of sacrifice. It turned out that monsters would give their hosts certain superpowers as feedback. At this moment, Anna felt like he could kill a tiger and thought about the various hardships after illegally immigrating to the United States. In order to work in a factory for a few thousand yuan, it was better to stay here and become the next boss. The story has come to an end, and the setting of the movie is very shocking. The plot, which is reversed in another space, is also thought-provoking and provides feedback on people's inner desires. Anna chose to kill her mother in another space, which restrained her desire. So the monster has also retreated to the channel. It uses human desires to fight martyrs, so please recognize reality and not be blinded by desire. Please give me a subscription, the next episode will be even more exciting.
To avoid missing out on more exciting movies, please click subscribe.